In the early 20th century, New Orleans was a city alive with music, mystery, and a cultural vibrancy unlike anywhere else in America. The streets pulsed with jazz. Italian grocers hawked their goods from shop fronts, and working-class families carved out lives under the humid southern skies. Yet beneath the surface of this colorful world, an unseen menace stalked the night. His weapon of choice was not a gun or knife, but an axe, a brutal tool that would carve his name into American criminal history. The first attack came in May 1918, when grocer Joseph Maggio and his wife, Catherine, were discovered in their apartment. Their throats had been cut and their skulls shattered with an axe. The weapon, it turned out, belonged to the couple themselves, left bloodied at the scene. Immediately, whispers spread across the city. This was no simple robbery. The violence was personal and the randomness chilling. With no clear suspect, the people in New Orleans began locking their doors tighter and peering nervously into the shadows. Soon, the newspapers seized on the story, transforming what might have been seen as an isolated crime into a sensationalized narrative. The Axeman, as he came to be known, was painted as a phantom-like figure, striking at will, vanishing into the humid night. Citizens were terrified and fascinated. With each new headline, the legend grew. But the Maggio murders were only the beginning. Over the next year, a pattern of blood, fear, and mystery would unfold, leaving the city forever haunted. The victims of the Axeman seemed, at first, to share one disturbing detail. Many were Italian immigrants, often small business owners or grocers. This detail led to rampant speculation. Was the killer motivated by racial prejudice, or was this tied to mafia rivalries simmering beneath the surface of New Orleans' ethnic enclaves? On June 27, 1918, just a month after Maggio's brutal deaths, another grocer, Louis Bessumer, and his mistress Harriet Lowe were attacked in their quarters behind the store. Both were bludgeoned with an axe, left clinging to life. Harriet survived long enough to give conflicting and confusing accounts, even suggesting Bessumer himself was responsible. But investigators uncovered something else. Bessumer's journals, written in German, raising suspicions of espionage during World War I. The case became entangled in xenophobia, suspicion, and scandal, drawing attention away from the larger pattern. Soon after, yet another grocer, Anna Schneider, was attacked in August 1918. Though she survived, the savagery left her permanently scarred. Her case further cemented the idea that the Axeman had a fixation on shopkeepers. Residents of New Orleans whispered about a curse upon the Italian grocer community. Some believed the Axeman harbored personal vengeance. Others thought he was a deranged drifter with no real pattern at all. What no one could deny was that the attacks were escalating, and the killer remained a ghost, leaving behind axes, blood, and confusion. By late summer of 1918, the Axeman's crimes had taken on a horrifying rhythm, always in the dead of night, always breaking into homes or apartments by chiseling away wooden doors or panels, and always using an axe found at the scene, tools belonging to the very victims themselves. This bizarre ritual made residents feel unsafe in their own homes. How could one guard against an enemy who turned household tools into murder weapons? Fear spread like wildfire. Families began sleeping together in single rooms, armed with shotguns and knives. Some even stayed awake all night, listening for the faintest sound of intrusion. The police, meanwhile, floundered. Despite dozens of witnesses reporting suspicious figures or noises, no consistent description of the Axeman emerged. He was tall, he was short, he was a dark figure, a shadowy presence. His identity slipped through the cracks of memory like smoke. The papers mocked the authorities, noting that the Axeman seemed always one step ahead. When Joseph Romano, another Italian grocer, was murdered in August, neighbors reported seeing a large, shadowy figure fleeing the scene. But as with every other attack, no real evidence remained. The killings were so random, so brutal, that the city began to spiral into paranoia. The Axeman was no longer just a killer. He was a force of terror, a phantom haunting the city's nights. Then came the moment that elevated the Axeman from criminal to legend, a chilling letter published in newspapers. In March 1919, the Times-Picayune received a letter allegedly from the Axeman himself. Written in flamboyant, almost theatrical style, it claimed he was not human at all, but a demon from the hottest hell. He taunted the police, declaring they would never catch him, and mocked the people of New Orleans for their fear. The letter contained one bizarre and unforgettable detail. The Axeman declared that on the night of March 19th, anyone playing jazz music would be spared his wrath. "I am fond of jazz," the letter read, "and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing." The city erupted in a mix of horror and strange excitement. That night, jazz filled every corner of New Orleans. Dance halls overflowed, families gathered around phonographs, and musicians played from porches and bars. Some residents reported the streets felt alive, as though the city itself was united in defiance. The Axeman killed no one that night, cementing his bizarre reputation as both a sadistic murderer and a twisted cultural icon. For one surreal evening, terror gave way to music, and the Axeman's myth grew even stronger. Amid the trail of blood, there were those who lived to tell the tale. Survivors' accounts provide some of the only glimpses into what it might have been like to face the Axeman. Many described waking in the dead of night to a looming figure, the flash of steel, and the crushing weight of blows that left them disoriented and bleeding. One of the most notable survivors was Sarah Lawman, a young woman who awoke in 1919 to find herself beaten and bloodied. Despite the attack, she lived, though her injuries left permanent scars. Then there was Charles Cortimiglia, who survived an attack that claimed his wife and young daughter. His testimony helped piece together some of the Axeman's methods, though the trauma haunted him for life. Survivors spoke of the Axeman's terrifying silence. He never uttered a word, never made a sound beyond the destruction he wrought. This silence added to his inhuman aura, making him seem more specter than man. These living witnesses not only kept the fear alive, but also deepened the mystery. Each account was fragmented, contradictory, or too vague to draw conclusions. Yet together, they painted a picture of a predator who thrived in chaos, feeding off fear as much as blood. As the killings piled up, the police and public clung to possible suspects. One was a man named Andrew Maggio, brother of the first victims, who behaved strangely in the aftermath and was briefly considered. Another was a man named Joseph Mumford, said to be connected with mafia activity. Years later, some even claimed Mumford's death in 1920 coincided with the end of the Axeman spree, suggesting he had been the killer all along. Yet none of these suspects were ever proven guilty. The problem was always the same: lack of evidence. The Axeman left behind no fingerprints, no consistent eyewitness testimony, and no clear motive. Some theorized he was a sadistic drifter who moved on when things became too dangerous. Others thought he was part of a larger criminal conspiracy. A few even believed the Axeman was more than one person, explaining the inconsistencies in his attacks. Every suspect who emerged was either cleared or faded into obscurity. This lack of closure became part of the Axeman's legend. He was less a man and more a mystery, forever lurking in collective imagination of New Orleans. The bizarre connection between the Axeman and jazz music remains one of the strangest details in true crime history. Some dismissed the letter as a hoax, perhaps written by a newspaper reporter or a local prankster. Yet its impact on the city was undeniable. Jazz was already the heartbeat of New Orleans, but on the night of March 19, 1919, it became something more, a shield against death. Families that had never embraced new music suddenly welcomed it into their homes, terrified of being marked for murder if they did not comply. Musicians found themselves unexpectedly in demand, playing at fever pitch as people danced with desperation. In the aftermath, jazz musicians capitalized on the legend. Songs like the mysterious Axeman's Jazz were written, immortalizing the bizarre night when music saved lives. To this day, the Axeman is inseparably tied to the cultural identity of New Orleans jazz. His crimes blurred the line between terror and folklore, embedding him in the very soul of the city's musical history. By 1919, New Orleans was in the grip of paranoia. Families fortified their homes, sleeping with weapons at the ready. Shopkeepers, particularly Italian grocers, felt they had targets painted on their backs. Every unexplained noise at night became a source of dread. The press only fueled the hysteria, with headlines warning that the Axeman could strike anywhere at any time. Stories of would-be vigilantes circulated, with men patrolling neighborhoods, hoping to catch the killer in the act. But the fear itself often led to tragedy. Innocent people were sometimes attacked on suspicion of being the Axeman. This panic was not confined to New Orleans alone. Newspapers across the nation picked up the story, and soon the Axeman was a household name. He became part of America's growing fascination with sensational crime, predating later serial killers who would dominate headlines. Yet, unlike those future cases, the Axeman had no clear ending, no resolution. This uncertainty only magnified the terror, leaving New Orleans in a state of prolonged dread. By late 1919, the killings abruptly stopped. No grand arrest, no dramatic confrontation, just silence. The Axeman, who had dominated the nightmares of New Orleans, simply vanished. Theories abound. Some say he was killed, others that he moved to another city, blending into anonymity. Still others insist the final suspect, Joseph Mumford, was indeed the Axeman, and his death closed a chapter. But with no definitive proof, the truth remained elusive. For the people of New Orleans, the end brought relief but not closure. The Axeman remained a specter of the past, his crimes never solved, his identity never unmasked. The silence that followed was almost as eerie as the killings themselves. After so much noise, literal and metaphorical, the absence of attacks felt unnatural. Yet life went on, and the city tried to heal. Today, the Axeman of New Orleans is remembered not only as a brutal killer, but as a cultural figure woven into the fabric of the city's history. His story embodies the strange dualities of New Orleans: beauty and violence, music and death, folklore and fact. He remains a subject of books, documentaries, and endless speculation among true crime enthusiasts. The jazz connection, especially, keeps his legend alive, reminding the world that night when an entire city danced to stay alive. The Axeman's legacy is not just in the murders he committed, but in the way he captured the imagination of a city and a nation. He represents the unsolved mysteries that haunt history, the shadows that resist explanation. In the end, the Axeman was never caught, never identified, and never forgotten. His axe may have been laid to rest, but his legend continues to echo in the streets of Jazz City, an unseen terror, forever haunting the rhythm of New Orleans. Would you have played jazz at night to save your life? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another dark tale from the Crit Stories.